Howdy everybody, this is Omar, your audio amigo, here today with my first ever digital audio player showcase / review video on the channel. Today's subject is this retro looking little guy. This is the Snowsky Echo Mini, a digital audio player from FiiO's lifestyle brand known as Snowsky, featuring a cassette player design, full balanced output, and a low price of $50 US. So, at that price, is this the sort of best entry-level digital audio player you can get? Let's find out. As you would expect, the unboxing experience for a budget product like this is pretty Spartan. You get the player itself, you get a USB A to C sort of charge sync cable, you get a manual, and that's about it. There is a leather case sold separately in terms of accessories. I personally would have liked to have seen a lanyard like they put on the Retro Nano, maybe take advantage of that little lanyard loop there. Another nice thing would have been a screen protector for the screen, but honestly, 50 bucks, I'm not expecting a whole lot in terms of accessories, and what they've given you is enough to start using the player from the word go. Alright, let's take a quick look at the unit itself. Echo Mini is an all-plastic construction. It's extremely lightweight. This one has a two-tone color to it. You've got the blue and the sort of gray here. It's also available, I think, in pink and in black, but I chose the blue one because I like the blue. The sides of the unit feature the reset button, the 3.5mm out, the 4.4mm full balanced out, more on that later. Other side is your SD card slot and your USB C connector, as well as that lanyard loop I referenced earlier. The top here is the transport controls. From left to right, you have power, a combo sort of volume control / track skip rocker / forward and back track selector. You also have a play pause button, a multifunction menu button, and a back button for navigating the menus. The feel on these buttons is honestly pretty decent. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I don't know if you can hear the clickiness there. There's a decent click to them. They don't feel super weak. I do wish there was a sort of raised bump or a indentation or symbol to help distinguish the buttons if you're sort of feeling around for the player in your pocket to turn the volume up and down or that sort of thing. Yeah, I also really wish there was a separate control for the volume, but we'll discuss that later. The 2-inch screen is rather small. You can see I'll turn it on there. You can see the viewing angles, however, are quite good, and the resolution is not terrible. I'll talk about the exact resolution here in a second, but it's a pretty nice screen, all things considered. I do wish it was larger and filled in more of those large black bezels. Touch would have been nice-ish, but I don't think it's strictly necessary for this player. Plus, this is 50 bucks, so I'm not expecting the biggest, slickest, fully featured display on this thing. No, the biggest disappointment on this entire device is around the back. Look, they molded a battery door onto the back cover. Awesome! Too bad it's literally just a decorative, non-functional element and doesn't actually mean that you can swap the battery easy. This was a real shoulder-sagging moment for me. To be fair, I asked FiiO about this when they first showed the product pictures. I told them on Twitter, like, hey, is that battery door real like it is on the Retro Nano? And they told me, no, it's not. It's just a decoration. It's a real shame, in my opinion, that they took the time and effort to design a battery door onto the back cover of the unit and then didn't make it real. I did take my Echo Mini apart. I'll pull up some pictures for you guys. Yeah, take the back cover off, look at the bottom. Not only is there plenty of room in there for a removable battery slightly larger than the one they have on the Retro Nano, but the battery that is there is glued and soldered in place, meaning that to swap the battery on this guy, you're going to need a 1.5 size hex head screwdriver for the 4 screws. You're going to need, a knife or something, a pry tool to get this apart. Then you're going to need a soldering iron to swap the battery on this. Not exactly as easy as the Retro Nano, which, as I said in the review for that one, my grandma could swap the battery on the Retro Nano. It's that easy. That's going to have longevity effects for this, but I don't want to get back on my soapbox, so we'll just go ahead and move on. Let's go ahead and talk about the full specifications for this guy. At the heart of the Echo Mini is a Rockchip RK Nano SoC. This is a common SoC for small players like this. You find it in a lot of budget players, sort of $100 and under. As I mentioned, the screen is a 2-inch non-touch unit. The resolution is 170 by 320. The Echo Mini features dual Cirrus Logic 43131 DAC chips and has a maximum rated output of 250 milliwatts. The internal storage is 8 gigabytes in size, and the maximum SD card capacity is 256 gigabytes, which is kind of a bummer. I did test that limitation with both a 512 gig card and a 1 terabyte card, and the player was constantly crashing when I was asking it to scan for media, so that's a legit limitation even on the latest 1.7 firmware, which at the time of writing is the latest firmware. The 55 grams of unit weight make this the lightest audio player that I currently own, which is kind of interesting. This unit does have Bluetooth, but it is transmit only, not receive. It's Bluetooth 5.3, and the only standard it supports is SBC, so you cannot use this with any of the Apple headphones. Snowsky lets you know right up front in the manual on the website, this will not support any AirPods whatsoever. The battery that we saw earlier in the unit is a 1100 milliamp hour battery that charges at the standard rate of 5 watts. This battery is good for 15 hours of continuous playtime, according to Snowsky. This is my first audio player review, so I came up with a sort of battery rundown test. Pull the unit out, put my card in there, fully charge it, connect a pair of COS KPH30Is, put the player in high gain mode, adjust the volume to a measured 78 dB, and put the entire player on shuffle. Then just turn the screen off and let it run until music stops. And that, for this player, was 8 hours, which is a good bit less than the promised 15 hours. I assume if you're going to be using IEMs in low gain mode, those numbers could come down closer to the, could come up to the promised 15 hours. But for me, 8 hours is honestly plenty, especially for the type of use that I use this thing for. So let's talk about the user experience and what it's like to live with this thing. So you power it on by holding down the power button. You'll get the little Snowsky screen, which y'all saw earlier. I did put in my 256 gigabyte testing SD card here. And the first thing you're going to want to do once you have your SD card in here is go over here to the file browser and go down to your card, and it's going to say confirm media library refresh. You're going to hit yes, and then you're going to wait. For my 256 gigabyte card, basically completely full of music, it took between 10 and 12 minutes, depending on the time I used it. I did time it 2 or 3 times. That time is going to depend a lot on not only how many files you have, but how they're organized and the speed of the processor here on the player. I do feel like the little RK Nano is clearly trying its best. I'm not going to make you wait 10 minutes. We're going to go ahead and jump cut. Okay, so for y'all that was instant. For me, that was right at 11 minutes, 10:52 I think, according to the timer. I went and made a cup of coffee. But anyway, once you have your media scanned, you sit here. This is the music playback menu, and I had a song playing. Hit back, you can get to the music playback menu. So you have your now playing, which if you hit the play pause button will take you to the screen we were just looking at. All songs is just a list of all your songs in alphabetical order. I do have mine numbered because for this SD card, I just threw a bunch of albums on here, no real organization, not like my real library. This is like a subset of songs. Favorites, which we'll talk about in a second. You can browse by artist, you can browse by albums, you can browse by genre. This is all using the tags built into your files. Folder navigation lets you go through the individual folders on your card if you prefer to browse that way or play a particular folder. And then, you can see it went back to the menu there. And then go back. And then media library refresh, you can rescan the card from here if you wish. So this is what the now playing screen looks like. If I press play, you see the cassette reel start moving. This is a standard quality file. You can see the file information there, artist, album, and the genre, which I don't have tagged on this folder. I have it set to normal on the EQ. It's on shuffle. I'm using the non-oversampling filter. That is the volume. That is the track number. That is the battery indicator. That's how much time is remaining on the play. Is that time remaining? No, that's total track time, and then that's the track that the time that we're currently at right now, and that will tell you whether or not it's playing or pause. You can see the cassette reels move along with it. I do have fast forward enabled, which I don't typically have enabled, but you can see if I press and hold, it will fast forward through the track. The cassette reels don't move when you do that, which is kind of a bummer. It also makes this volume rocker here even more complex to use, which we'll talk about in a minute. But first, what I want to do is go through the playback menu here. So album art display, if you enable that, it changes the playback screen. So it looks like that. And if you have album art embedded into the tags on your files, it will display your album art. This is not the greatest resolution or contrast screen, but doesn't look too bad. You do lose the cassette reels, though, which for me at least is half the point of the player. So I typically have that set to disabled. The volume limiter lets you set a maximum volume limit for the player. If you're going to hand this to someone else, you don't want them to blow their ears out, I just leave it at max. This is basically the playback settings. Repeat all is just standard play every song on the player or on the folder or whatever playlist you have selected. Loop once just repeats a song over and over again. Sequential play will go through the whole thing in order. And then shuffle play, which is what I have going on. Not really anything special here. The wording is a bit confusing, but once you figure it out, it's not too bad. There we go. Come on. Equalizer. So these are the baked-in equalizer presets. You have retro, bass, heavy, pop, jazz, unique, and custom. The custom lets you access a 5-band profile here. If I can remember how to change this. So that lets you go down and up a little bit, and then for next you press the menu button. Yeah. So you press the multifunction button to go to the next frequency band. You can see those are 100, 300, 1000, 3000, and 10,000. And that's it. You get a little 5-band custom EQ. Not exactly fully featured PEQ, but hey, it's something. If you're sensitive to 1 or 3 or 10K, you can turn that down if you want. Here's your DAC filters. I have mine set to oversampling disabled, as I typically do for most things. Gain adjustment, this is where you switch between low and high gain if you need the high gain for a big set of headphones. And then fast forward mode, which I just showed you how to do. You hold that button down. You can enable or disable it here. I typically have it disabled just how I use the player. Yeah, let's talk about that volume rocker. This player is asking a lot of this little rocker here. So with a song playing, you press either direction once to bring up the volume menu, and then you can go volume down by going, it's lined up with these arrows. So volume down is this button, and volume up is this button. Once you're on the volume menu, you can press and hold to go up a little bit more quickly than you would if you were to spam the button. Same in the other direction. Go back down to 20. And if you want to get out of the volume screen at any time, you hit the back button. You saw I triggered it by accident there, which is just a little bit of what happens with this player. But double tapping the direction will go forward or back a track. There you go. And then pressing and holding, as I said, is the fast forward or rewind feature. I typically, like I said, have that turned off because I think it's just one less thing for that poor volume rocker to do is probably best. I don't use this for testing tracks because of kind of the clunkiness of this control. I use this mostly to throw on shuffle and just listen to music. So fast forward is not really necessary for me for this player, at least how I have learned to use it. A minor thing that bothers me, I mentioned those volume controls earlier. To me, these are backwards. It feels wrong to hit right to go down in volume and left to go up in volume, but I guess it matches the labels there, so I can't really complain too much about it. There's lots of little quirkiness about the UI. Say I want to add this song to my favorites. As someone who grew up using an iPod Nano and iPod Classic, I wish there was an easier way to do that. If I want to add this song to my favorites, okay, I have to press the back button here to pull up this menu. Now with the song highlighted, I have to press and hold play pause. Or sorry, let's hit the menu button, there we go, and then I hit add to favorites. So that requires from the now playing screen, go back to it, okay. Sorry, I have to go back there first and then go there. Okay, there we go. So say song comes up on shuffle, I want to add it to my favorites. I have to hit 1, 2, 3 buttons to get it to add to my favorites list, and now it appears in my favorites there, as you can see. Yeah, the navigation takes a lot of getting used to. The main player menu is accessible. Go back again, go back. Here's the main player menu. The system settings, okay? You have Bluetooth. You can turn Bluetooth on or off. You can see what devices are in the area, and you can see what you're currently paired to. As I mentioned, the Bluetooth is transmit only, and it's SBC only, so no AirPods. Other things you can adjust in that menu, as I go back to it, you can adjust how long the screen stays on before it turns itself off, how bright the screen is. You can control how long the player stays on period before it turns itself off. You can also do power saving shutdown, which is just kind of like a sleep mode. There's date and time if you want to set the clock, the display, or the timeout again for the screen. You can change the interface from the correct dark mode to a brighter mode. Here's where you change your language. Mine did come from the factory in Chinese, so had to come in here and adjust it. Wasn't too difficult to find. There's all your info. You can see here is a list of supported audio formats. This is interesting. So I upgraded to the 1.7 firmware, and I believe one of the features that added was compatibility for OGG files. I do have some OGG files in my library. I went ahead and put them on here. Myself and some other people online have experienced that the OGG compatibility is not exactly fully baked, and that triggered, and I've had this issue before I even loaded OGG files. I've had a couple of times where I would be using the player, and then after like a day or so of using it, I would come back to play a song, and it would say file not recognized. And it was the exact song I was listening to sort of 2-3 days ago. And I said, well, why the heck is the file format incompatible? I was just listening to it. And then the number of songs that would throw that error would start increasing over time until a vast majority of the songs I had were incompatible. Now, I know the file format list. It's in the manual in here. It's in the player itself. All of my songs in my library are compatible with this player. But for some reason, the only way I could fix it is to take the SD card out, plug it into a computer, format it, reload it with music, and then bring it up on here and do a complete rescan. That did fix it. That's a very time-consuming way to fix something that honestly is basic functionality. And again, all of my files are on the supported list. I would say overall, considering what a bare-bones device this is, those little quirks and controls in the UI are expected. This is a $50 player. I really, really would have liked like a little volume wheel here on the bottom or here on the top, like maybe scoot all the controls over a little bit and have just a little volume wheel here. Just a separate volume control would have been really nice, would have made the clunkiness of navigating the player a little bit easier. One other thing I'll say is I'm not, like I said earlier, I'm not the only one experiencing that file format error. There are a bunch of people online that have it. Some people have it affecting large swaths of their library like I did. Yeah, there's people who have it worse than me. I've been able to fix it every time it's happened. Like I said, pull the card out, reformat it, reload it. It's just a really annoying issue. They might have this fixed for 1.8 or 1.9 or version 2 of the firmware. I don't know, but it's a problem that I'm having, so you get to hear about it. But enough about the UI. Let's talk about the sound quality here. And I'm going to be honest, sound quality is not my primary thing that I care about when I'm shopping for a player. There are a couple of things, though, that I do care about in terms of sound quality. The first thing I try to test is output impedance. This is important because some IEMs like the SimGot SuperMix 4, the Canera Celeste Relentless, and the Truth Ear Zero Blue 2 are quite sensitive to output impedance, and they will change sound by quite a bit when exposed to higher output impedance devices. Thankfully, in my testing and according to FiiO spec sheet, the Echo Mini has a very low output impedance. I think it says less than 1 ohm on the spec sheet. I can confirm that. I listened to the Zero Blue 2 on like my really nice desktop amp and on this, and there really wasn't any extra bass coming through, which means the output impedance here is basically negligible, which is all I really care about. The other thing that I care about when it comes to players like this is noise floor. I have some IEMs that are very sensitive. They'll pick up noise on like my older iPods, my cassette players, those sort of things. And so if I can plug those IEMs into this and not get a distracting, annoying amount of noise coming through here, it's a pass, and the Echo Mini did pass. My 2 or 3 sensitive IEMs that I used for this didn't pick up any noticeable hiss or noise here on the Echo Mini. And those IEMs do pick up noise or hiss, like I said, on my iPod Classic and on some other things. Outside of those 2 things, I personally didn't notice anything better or worse about the sound quality on the Echo Mini, at least when I compared it to other devices that use CS43131 chips. That's a very good thing in my book. It means this sounds about as good as a well-built dongle, and it won't get in the way of me and my music. But it wouldn't be an Audio Amigo review if I didn't compare it to at least one thing. Now, there are a ton of non-Android based audio players sort of under $100. A lot of them use similar Rockchip SoCs, other ones use different ones that you can flash with Rockbox and other operating systems. I don't have any of those here with me. The Xduo X2S comes to mind. That has a much more basic screen, supports even smaller SD cards, doesn't have balanced output. It's an older unit. I frankly don't think it would be much competition for this. However, I do have the player. When I go on Reddit and I see people making comments, they say, oh, well, should I get this or this? The one that gets brought up the most is the Hiby R1. So let's go ahead and get into the comparison. All right, so the Hiby R1, priced at $85 US, which, depending on where you're shopping here, is either $15 or $35 more than the Echo Mini. Biggest difference, in my opinion, is the fact that the R1 here supports SD cards up to 2 terabytes in size, meaning I can actually fit my entire library on one device, versus the Echo Mini, where I have to pick and choose specific albums to throw on the 256 gigabyte card. Other big difference for me is the dedicated volume buttons on the R1. It just makes for a less clunky experience in everyday operation. Now, the R1 isn't perfect. You can see it doesn't have a dedicated back button. It has next track and it has play pause, which means if this is in my pocket and I want to go back to the previous track, I have to pull it out of my pocket, hit that button to wake it up, and then hit previous track, which is just more annoying than the Echo Mini, where if this is sitting in my pocket and I want to go back a track, I just double tap that or hold it down depending on what setting I'm in. No problem. Doesn't even need to come out of my pocket. So that is more convenient there. The Echo Mini does have an extra DAC chip, which makes it have a full balanced output versus the 3.5 millimeter only on the R1. But other than the extra output power on the balanced connector here, in terms of sound, these are both using CS43131 chips, and they sound identical to me. Really no difference in sound. They both have very low output impedance, which means no changes to sensitive IEMs, and there's no discernible noise floor even on my very sensitive IEMs. One thing the R1 does have that I personally don't use, but that I know some people really find important, is you have Tidal and QoBuzz support. So if you're a streaming person, that's a very nice thing to have. You can stream your things on here if you want. I don't know what the app functionality for those things is like, but it is there if you have it. Might want to go check out someone who does stream. I'm not the best person to talk about the streaming experience, honestly. I apologize. Other annoying things about the R1, it has a volume lock from the factory that you need to disable to get access to the full output power here. I've seen a lot of people online saying, oh, the R1, I can't get enough volume out of it for my headphones. I can't do this, I can't do that. You need to enable developer options and disable the volume protect. That's a very annoying regulation. It affects a lot of players, not just Hiby. So yeah, you're gonna need to go in and remove the volume limit on this if you want to get the full output power, which you will need for more demanding headphones. This you can just go full tilt right off the bat, which is kind of nice. The extra power that the Snowsky has over balanced might be the reason that the R1 spanked the Echo Mini in the battery life test. I got 8 hours here on the Echo Mini, as I said earlier. The R1 got 14 hours. Now, that's both of them in high gain mode, both of them powering the same headphones at the same volume. This is actually really close to Hiby's quoted 15-hour spec, which I think is pretty impressive. Personally speaking, while the Echo Mini isn't as fully featured as the R1, which one of these is for you is honestly going to come down to your budget. The R1 is the more traditional sort of fully featured player, but it can also be up to $35 more expensive depending on what price you find this at. If you're shopping for a $50 audio player, you probably don't have the extra $35 to spend on an R1. The fact that this has an internal memory of 8 gigabytes means that you technically don't even need an SD card for this, whereas this has no internal memory. You will need an extra purchase of an SD card to get this thing going at all. This, at the very minimum, $50 purchase, some songs straight off of your computer onto the internal memory. Yeah, it's only 8 gigabytes, but hey, you're listening to music for $50. If you go on Amazon and you see this on sale for $70, don't panic. Linsoul still has it for $50. I'll put a link down in the description for you guys. They do have free shipping. It will take a while, but there's no need to pay $70 for this and make this seem a better deal. $50 is all you should be paying for this guy. The Echo Mini does have a certain charm that you don't really get on the R1 or any other players, to be honest. The cassette-like body, the clunky-ish controls, it just adds something that the R1 and its mostly touchscreen interface just can't match. Again, I don't think these players are necessarily competing with each other here. Their feature sets and price points are just a little bit too different, and the people that I would recommend the Echo Mini for are a completely different set of people that I would recommend the R1 for. If you just want an audio player that you can load up with your entire library that will work smoothly, nicely, and that you can maybe stream music from, the R1 is most likely the better choice for you if you can afford it. If you're on a tight budget though, and you want a non-wireless player that doesn't have any dumb features, that just plays music and doesn't do much else, the Echo Mini can honestly work just fine. There are some situations where I think it can work even better than the R1. But yeah, I honestly don't think these two compete with each other. I think they're each doing their own thing. So that leads me rather neatly to my recommendation and my score. For all of its faults, and there are many, I find it difficult to criticize the Echo Mini for two reasons. First of all, Snowsky have already released 7 firmware updates for this since launch, fixing a lot of the bugs that I had problems with. What that means is the file format bug might be fixed at some point. Who knows, they might even do an upgrade that increases the SD card limitation. The other thing that I find difficult to criticize this thing for is it's $50, and it's even cheaper than that when it goes on sale or you have coupons. I think during the recent summer sale, this thing was down to like $35. Yeah, compared to the $100 class of digital audio players, this thing is going to fall a little bit flat. But just browsing Amazon, if you compare this to the other like $45, $50, $60 players out there, this has some very compelling features. Balanced output is essentially a non-existent thing on the competition at this price point, as are the dual DACs. And yeah, there are other things at this price point that have, larger screens or, different operating systems and things. The processing power down at this price point means that if you have a big screen with fancy graphics and animations on it, the experience is going to be more encumbering than anything else. The fact that the Echo Mini doesn't have any complications in terms of Wi-Fi or anything else means that it runs pretty well on that very low power chip. My biggest issues with this player are the 256 gigabyte card limitation, the lack of separate volume control, the lack of a replaceable battery, and that annoying file format bug. As I said, that file format bug and maybe the 256 card limitation could be addressed with future firmware updates, but the rest of my problems are down to the physical reality of the player. I'm going to go ahead and give this player a score of "but I like this." I think that if you treat this sort of as an offline iPod shuffle equivalent, where you plug this thing in, you load a random assessment of songs onto it, take it out on a walk or on public transport, hit shuffle, and then just only concern yourself with adjusting the volume in your pocket, I think this can be a really lightweight, stylish player for walks, the gym, or commuting. That's what I use it for. This is my iPod Shuffle for walks. I also think that this is probably the best digital audio player from a pure audio standpoint for under $60. So if you're on a tight budget and your main priority is output power and sound quality, as long as you can deal with the quirks, this will be the player for you. But that's enough yapping from me, and that's going to be my first audio player review in the books. I maybe didn't go as in-depth as I would have wanted, but I wanted to consider the length of this video. I can't realistically cover everything that came up in my testing for this device in one video. I did my best to hit the big highlights. Have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them if I know. There are more audio player reviews to come. This is a subject that I'm pretty passionate and quite picky about, as you could tell by the user experience section. So look forward to those. I think Apos is sending me the X2O X5, so we'll see how that one is. My next showcase video is going to be on the Rose Technics Ceramics and Ceramic X True Wireless Stereo Buds. I've been wanting to do some more true wireless stereo, like Bluetooth content. It's just a very time-consuming product type to test. So look forward to that one if you're into that sort of thing. But for now, that's going to do it. I appreciate all your continued support. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Omar with Audio Amigo Reviews, and I will catch y'all next time.